Hello, everybody. Welcome into GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Thursday, March 20th. March Madness is here. We're going to go over a lot of stuff today, including some big news out of the NFL. There is potential rule changes out there, as they do every single year. Some really interesting ones, including banning the tush push and changing the seeding format in the NFL playoffs. We'll talk about that, as well as J.J. McCarthy potential trades with the Chargers for Justin Herbert, maybe. Then we'll get into all the predictions, breaking down every single game for Friday NCAA March Madness first round matchups. Then we finish off our show talking a little bit about baseball, previewing every single team. Today, taking a look at the Washington Nationals. But before we get into any of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Thursday, March 20th, But like I was saying, we are going to get into everything to do with this football, with the rule changes real quick. Every single year, the NFL goes out, and each team has a chance to propose a rule change or two. This year is no different, but there's a couple of them that I think are really interesting to take a look at. One of them we've kind of talked about before is the Packers saying they want to ban the tush push, the brotherly shove, whatever you want to call it. They want to ban that. They are claiming that it's bad for player safety, for pace of play. But really the issue here is that they don't like playing against it, right? This is the Packers team that lost 2 games this year to the Eagles. Once in the regular season, once in the wild card round in the playoffs. But this is an Eagles team that does this play like nobody else can. Right? We've talked about it. People say this play takes no skill. They're wrong about that, right? This is a play that absolutely takes skill. This is a play that if it literally took no skill, everybody would do it. The Packers would do it. The Chiefs would do it. The Giants would do it. The Browns would do it. Whoever. Every single team in the NFL would do it at every single opportunity they possibly could. Instead, this is a play that is almost entirely reserved for 2 different teams, the Bills and the Eagles. And the reason that these teams can do it is because of the quarterbacks they have, is because of the supremely talented and crazy athletic, strong, lower body quarterbacks that they have in Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen. This is why they're so successful at that play. The Eagles add in an extremely big, strong, and powerful offensive line to add to that as well. Yet another reason why they are excellent at that play and why it's their play and nobody else can do it at the same level that they can. But the fact that they're claiming player injury is ridiculous. There's not a single player in the entire league that was hurt on a tush push last year. They did a study, not a single one. People that are saying Patrick Mahomes hurt his knee on a tush push, that was just a QB sneak. It was just a QB sneak. He got his knee tangled up in the wrong way. Was not a tush push. It was just a QB sneak. And if you're going to ban the tush push because of injury reasons, you might as well ban the QB sneak as well, right? The only valid reason that I've heard is that the defense can't do a defensive tush push. It's the only valid reason that I've heard to ban it, which just let the defense do a defensive tush push. Who knows? That's the simple way to do it. But this is not a rule that needs to be changed. This is not a play that needs to be taken out of the game. It's not dangerous. It doesn't slow down the pace of play. And it's not something that's so prevalent that every single team in the entire NFL can do this day in, day out without any issues. The other big rule change, and the one that I think is a little bit more interesting, is the one that the Detroit Lions proposed. The Lions won the NFC last year, the number 1 seed, 15-2. But one thing that they did propose is a change to playoff seeding. And this is a little bit controversial. I understand why people don't want it to happen, but this I really love. The Lions propose a rule basically saying, we don't want division winners to automatically get home games. We're just going to do it based off of record only. So it's not taking away the fact that a division winner can still make the playoffs. We've seen examples of sub 500 teams getting into the playoffs because they won their division. That's not coming away, right? They would just be forced down to the 7th seed instead of being that 4 seed in each conference, which I really do love, right? The fact that it doesn't take away the meaning of winning a division. You still get that playoff spot. Winning your division is not going to become meaningless like it is in the NBA, where you win your division, congrats, you don't get anything for it. The only thing you get is, most people don't even, I mean, honestly, most people don't even know that the NBA has divisions. It's wild like that, right? Because the divisions, they don't matter. It's conferences in the NBA. And what the NFL would still do by keeping divisions is allow that division to still matter. You win your division, you get to the playoffs automatically. And since that's still a thing, there's no reason to say the main argument against this is that it takes away the meaning of a division game. You need a prize for winning your division. I think making the playoffs is for winning your division is a good enough prize in itself. You don't deserve 2 prizes by also getting a home game. And this would change a fair number of things. This year is a very big example of that, right? In the AFC side of things, the Texans and the Chargers, who played each other in Houston, would have played each other in LA instead. And who knows how that game would have changed if it wasn't in Houston and was instead at SoFi Stadium in front of a Chargers crowd. That was a game that had a lot of momentum swings, and maybe because the Texans were at home, they were able to get that last momentum swing and keep it going the way they needed to. On the NFC side, it's even crazier. Of course, we saw the Vikings, who were fighting for that number 1 seed in the NFC, lose in the final week of the season and drop to the 5 seed. They would move all the way up to the 3rd seed. The Bucks, who were the 3rd seed, would jump all the way to the 6th seed. The Rams, who were the 4 seed, would fall to the 7 seed. The Commanders would go to 3rd, and the Packers would go to 4th. This completely changes the way that the playoff format goes, right? Instead of seeing, the Eagles play the Packers, the Eagles are now playing the Rams in round 1. Instead of seeing the Bucks play the Commanders, they would still play, but it would be in Washington this time. Now that one didn't actually matter, but this makes a huge difference. The Packers get a much better matchup. They go all the way up to the 4 seed. They would be playing the 5 seed, which in this example would still be the 5 seed, right? So that's just a much better matchup for all of these teams overall. And I still think that these I still think that these is a good thing, right? You can keep going back. You can go to 2023, where the 4 seed in both the AFC and the NFC would move to the 6 seed, the 5 to the 4, the 6 to the 5. Again, the Jags in 2022, 4 to 6. Chargers at 5 go to 4, Ravens 6 to 5. The Bucks in 2022 would drop all the way to the 7 seed, moving all the wild card teams up a spot. Cowboys to 4, Giants to 5, Seahawks to 6. In 2021, there were no changes. But in 2020, the Washington football team, a sub 500 football team, would drop from 4 to 7. The Bucks with Tom Brady, who won the Super Bowl, would host a playoff game, move from 5 to 4. The Rams 6 to 5, and the Bears 7 to 6. This changes not only the matchups, the teams they're playing, but it also changes where the game is. And home field advantage is a real thing, especially in the playoffs. And seeing all of these massive changes being made, especially since it's being proposed by a team that wouldn't benefit or be hurt from this last year or in years past, it's just one of these things that I think has to change. We have these complaints when we're talking about the college football playoffs, right? Oh, the auto bids, they're getting all the way to they're getting automatic buys when they win their conference. What's different in the NFL, right? What is different about that? When you win your division, you get an automatic home game. That is a massive advantage for you. And it's a good thing that you get an advantage, but making the playoffs on its own should be a prize in and of itself. You shouldn't feel entitled because you win your division if you're a team that, went 8-9. If you're a team that went 9-8, went 10-7, and the rest of the league won 11 games, you shouldn't feel entitled to a home game because you weren't the fourth best team in the conference. You were the best team in your division, and you deserve to make the playoffs for that. But you do not deserve to get an automatic home game for it. And I love the fact that the Lions are making this rule. Again, if they take away automatic playoff berths for winning your division, that's where I draw the line. You win your division, I believe you should get into the playoffs. That is a tough thing to do in the NFL. But I don't think it should necessarily mean you automatically host a playoff game. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What do you think of these rule changes in the NFL? Do you think either of these rules are going to get passed? What do you think of the Lions' potential rule change with the seeding? I'd love to hear all your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we continue our jaunt around the NFL with some big rumors about a potential massive quarterback on the move. We'll talk about that next, coming up here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Thursday, March 20th. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over the potential rule changes from around the world of football. In this segment, we turn our attention to a massive rumor surrounding Justin Herbert and the Minnesota Vikings. We'll talk about that in a second. Before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Thursday, March 20th. But like I was saying, we are going to get to a little bit here on Justin Herbert to the Vikings. One of the most shocking rumors I've heard in a long time. This is coming directly from a Minnesota Vikings insider here. They on a show came out yesterday that they had an anonymous emailer say that connections inside the Vikings, multiple connections inside the Vikings, are suggesting to him that potentially the Vikings are in on a major deal to trade for quarterback Justin Herbert from the Chargers. And normally, I would dismiss this as nothing, right? But there have been a couple reports that make me think this is possible. First of all, we're going to talk about the relationships here, right? J.J. McCarthy, former quarterback from Michigan, drafted last year. His college coach moved up to the NFL with him, went to the Los Angeles Chargers. Jim Harbaugh, his coach, a guy that he raved about, someone that he raved about so much that people were mocking him early last year to the Chargers in the NFL draft. That is how much praise Jim Harbaugh put on J.J. McCarthy. Justin Herbert, in my opinion, a top 5 quarterback, but he's not someone that Jim Harbaugh drafted. He's not someone that this coaching staff brought in. It's not someone that they built their team around. Now, do I think that's a bad thing? No, but you see a lot of times these guys that just inherit guys, when it comes to keeping them around, loyalty to the player, it doesn't always stick. And that's where we're coming from a relationship standpoint. The other report from Tom Pelissero, when we talked yesterday about the Vikings being out on Aaron Rodgers, the report didn't specifically say they're not looking for a quarterback. The report said they have rejected multiple trade offers for quarterback J.J. McCarthy, which is implying that teams have been calling about J.J. McCarthy, and one of those teams potentially could have been the Chargers. Now, let's go with this story. Let's go with the fact that this happens. What is it going to take? What would it take for the Minnesota Vikings to get Justin Herbert? Well, first of all, they would have to send J.J. McCarthy over. That is step one. Step two is going to be a huge draft compensation. You're looking at a guy in Justin Herbert who is still in his mid-20s. You look at a guy in Justin Herbert that is arguably the fifth best quarterback in the NFL. You look at a guy in Justin Herbert that undoubtedly is incredibly skilled, and you pair him up with Justin Jefferson and his incredibly big arm. You pair him up with TJ Hawkinson and his ability to escape and make the good, quick reads. You pair him up with Jordan Addison and Aaron Jones and everyone else in that building with a great defense. This is a Vikings team that is Super Bowl contenders immediately. And if you disagree, you're crazy. Justin Herbert, I know he's a little bit of a sticking point in the NFL for some people. He's a little bit overrated or underrated for some people. Some people, like me, have him rated as high as the number 5 quarterback. Some people I've heard not having him in the top 10, which ridiculous. Ridiculous if he's not in your top 10. Justin Herbert is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I know he doesn't have the postseason, but you don't need the postseason stuff to be a great quarterback in the NFL. He is undoubtedly one of the top quarterbacks in the league. He's elite at what he does. His arm strength, his decision making, everything he does on a football field is amazing. But I digress. This trade compensation would have to be some of the biggest in NFL history. I know we've seen an entire draft class be traded, and it's not going to be anything like that. It's not going to be anything where we say he's going to trade their entire draft class. But where it might come in is he's trading multiple firsts. You get a quarterback replacement in J.J. McCarthy, who I think is fine. I think J.J. McCarthy is a league average quarterback. He's someone that can come in and do what Bo Nix can do. Bo Nix turned out to be just fine. I think he's better than Bo Nix. So if he's better than Bo Nix, you're not necessarily going to be mad about that, right? But the other thing that I think you would have to give, again, multiple first-round picks, because J.J. McCarthy has not proved it. Regardless of how much Jim Harbaugh and a lot of people around the NFL might like J.J. McCarthy, he hasn't proved it. I don't see a world where the Chargers are happy to give up Justin Herbert. I don't see a world where they're calling to say, hey, I've got a Justin Herbert. Will you give me J.J. McCarthy and 3 first-round picks? If I'm the Vikings, I'm absolutely doing that. The way this team is set up already with Coach Kevin O'Connell, you don't necessarily need all of these first-round picks. You don't necessarily need, and their help, it's great luxury to have, but you're a team that's pretty much set up. You've got a lot of cap space, players like you in the NFLPA report card. You're fighting with the Dolphins for that number 1 spot year in, year out. There's no reason why you wouldn't be okay, I should say, with parting with J.J. McCarthy and 3 first-round picks for Justin Herbert. You won 14 games with Sam Darnold. Imagine what the Vikings could do if they get a top 5 quarterback. They've been amazing with Kirk Cousins. They've been great with Case Keenum. They've been great with Sam Darnold, right? They've been great with these quarterbacks that are top 15 at best. I don't think anybody's saying Kirk Cousins is a top 10 quarterback. I don't think anybody's saying Sam Darnold or Case Keenum were top 10 quarterbacks. But with this Vikings team, with this iteration of the Vikings, the last 10 years of it, they've had success with that top 15 to top 20 quarterback range. And they've been a very successful team. Now imagine what happens when they get a guy that's elite in the next level. This is a Vikings team that would explode and undoubtedly, to me, be a Super Bowl contender. I don't see a way that this doesn't work for the Vikings. Now, I don't think it's actually going to happen. I don't see a world where the Chargers move off of Justin Herbert either. But where there's smoke, a lot of times there's fire. And maybe it's just the Vikings calling and seeing, testing the waters. Hey, I know Jim Harbaugh likes J.J. McCarthy. What if we give you him? What else would it take for Justin Herbert, right? Maybe that's all it is. Maybe that's the conversation that took place. But if it comes out that the Chargers are willing to trade Justin Herbert, I'm giving up my soul, my left arm, my right leg, everything I possibly can as an NFL GM to bring in an uber-talented guy still in his prime like Justin Herbert. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think this is going to happen? What do you think this changes the Vikings into or the Chargers into if this move actually does come to fruition? I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention to March Madness. We've had a lot of games already go on, some games still going on Thursday, but we're going to preview every single Friday game, every single game taking place tomorrow for the NCAA tournament. We'll be right back here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now. Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Thursday, March 20th. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over a lot of big NFL stories that broke yesterday and this morning. In this segment, we turn our attention to March Madness. A lot of the games underway have already started in the round of 64. The first 4 games are over and done with, but we're going to turn our attention over to the Friday slate. 16 games on Friday. We're going to go over each and every one, break them down, who's going to win, starting off with the first 8 game, the early pod, the first and second pod of games that take place tomorrow. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those 2 things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Thursday, March 20th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into a little bit here on the first 8 games on the slate for tomorrow. We're going to start off with one of them that is a true pick'em game. The Baylor Bears taking on the number 9 seed Baylor Bears, taking on number 8 Mississippi State. Mississippi State coming from that stacked SEC. It's a conference that brought 14 teams, the most ever, to a tournament. This game is going to be electric. This is one of those games that I've gone back and forth on over and over again. But at the end of the day, I'm trusting the team that has a little bit more tournament experience in Baylor. Baylor has a coach that's been there and done that. They've won a national title. This is a great Mississippi State team, and I think Mississippi State favored by 1 in this one shows why this game is must-view experience, right? We saw Creighton-Louisville, the other really close 8-9 matchup, lead off the day today. Creighton blew them out. Louisville just couldn't really hit a shot in the first quarter. Creighton shooting nearly 60% from the field. That's just what's going to happen at that point. But I think this game is going to be what we thought Creighton-Louisville might be. I think this game is going to be what we expected it to be. And I think Baylor comes out on top in this one, although it absolutely is going to be an incredibly close game. And I'm not confident about either one of these. The next one goes the opposite way. Number 2, Alabama taking on number 15, Robert Morris. And in the last couple years, there's been a lot of 15-2 upsets. Alabama favored by 21.5 in this game, but the way that Alabama plays basketball, their quick pace, they're more experienced than they were last year. This is a team that was a number 2 seed for a very good reason. This is a team that when we went through all of the historical indicators to see who could win, we narrowed it down to 5 teams. They were still there. Alabama, one of those top 5 teams based on historical trends that can still win this tournament. They're top 12 in both offensive and defensive efficiency by KenPom. Alabama is going to win this game. 21.5 is a lot of points, but we've seen bigger blowouts before. I think they take care of business in this one. Alabama wins by 1 million. Lipscomb versus Iowa State, though, the 14-seed Lipscomb taking on the 3-seed Iowa State, is really interesting. Iowa State, of course, without their best player, one of their guys that brings the most points. Iowa State all year has been thriving on defense. They've been a very great defensive team. They're still a great defensive team, but their offense, especially their shooting, has struggled at times. They shoot a lot. When they shoot the ball, it doesn't always work out for them. They're not the best 3-point shooting team. Lipscomb, on the other hand, pretty solid 3-point shooting team. And this one, they could give them trouble. Iowa State, I still think at the end of the day, is a better team than Lipscomb. They were near the top of every single ranking for a very good reason. But losing your best player is going to hurt. I think 14.5 is too tight. We've seen a lot of upsets in recent years of 14 threes, 15 twos. This is one to keep an eye on, but I think Iowa State, even without their best player, finds a way to win this one, advance to the round of 32. I just don't think 14.5 points is enough. I still think Lipscomb probably covers that, but Iowa State moves on. Up next, we've got Colorado State, the 12 seed, taking on the 5 seed Memphis. And this one's interesting because Colorado State, the 12 seed, actually favored in this one by 1.5 points. Colorado State won the Mountain West this year, but the Mountain West has really struggled in tournaments when they're not a top 5 seed. We saw San Diego State get boat raced by UNC in the first 4 game a couple days ago. Memphis is a very solid team. They were in the top 25 for most of the season. They were flirting with top 15 for a while as well. Memphis is a great 5 seed. They are going to win this matchup. I don't understand why Colorado State is favored, if I'm being completely honest with you. Colorado State's a solid team. They took down Boise State in the finals. They play good defense, but I really do like what Memphis brings to the table, and I think Memphis is going to take care of business pretty handily against this Colorado State 12-seeded team. Then we get our first 16-1 of the day with Duke favored by 32.5 points against Mount St. Mary's. Mount St. Mary's, of course, looked pretty solid in their first 4 game that took place yesterday, but it's still a 16 seed versus a 1 seed. This one doesn't deserve too much conversation. At the end of the day, Duke is by KenPom, the second best team in the history of college basketball ever. By those rankings, only trailing a 1999 Duke team. But still, this Duke team is very good. They're going to win this game by a lot of points. Mount St. Mary's, congratulations on winning a tournament game. You just ran into a juggernaut in Duke at number 1. Then we have a really interesting one. The number 10 Vanderbilt Commodores taking on the St. Mary's Gales. 7 seed St. Mary's, they're tournament veterans. They seem to be in around a 7 seed every single year. They play at an incredibly slow pace. Vanderbilt, on the other hand, new coach Mark Byington, coming over from James Madison University, has brought this team to the tournament. Of course, the entirety of this Vanderbilt team and the entirety of the SEC seemingly has made the tournament. But this is going to be a really interesting matchup because St. Mary's, like I said, likes to play slow. That can get Vanderbilt out of their game. It's just this game is going to depend on whose pace they play at. If you play at St. Mary's pace, St. Mary's is going to win. St. Mary's is favored by 4.5. But if Vanderbilt can get St. Mary's to rush a little bit, take a little bit less time, take a little bit less time on their possessions, force them into bad shots, I think Vanderbilt can pull it off, and I think this is one that will happen. I think that Vanderbilt is a team that is built for March here. They can go on a bit of a run. Of course, they'd run into Alabama in the next round, but still, I like this Vanderbilt team a lot. I think they take care of business. Vandy wins versus St. Mary's. Then we have our first of the 11 seeds out of the first 4. UNC favored in this one by 2.5 points, taking on number 6 Ole Miss. Again, another one of those uber talented SEC schools. Ole Miss is a little bit inconsistent, though. Their offense is among the best in the country, but they just haven't quite been as consistent on defense, and UNC coming in on a heater. Aside from a loss versus Duke, they have a couple losses versus Duke down the stretch. They have been near unbeatable. They absolutely dismantled a team in San Diego State when they took them on in the first 4. A team that has won a first 4 game has gone to go on a run in every single tournament over the last couple years, some all the way to the Final 4. 11 seeds out of the ACC tend to do pretty good. We saw NC State go on a big run last year. I think UNC continues that tradition. They take care of business against a very good Ole Miss squad. They win in a tight one. And the final game of the early window, I'll say the first 2 windows of games taking place tomorrow. Number 13, Grand Canyon taking on number 4, Maryland. Maryland favored by 10.5 in this one. The 4 seed Maryland is really good. They're a team that's my dark horse pick to win the bracket this year. I love this Maryland team and their Crab 5, one of the best starting 5s in all of college basketball. Just purely based on the starting lineups, I'd put them toe-to-toe with just about anybody. Grand Canyon made the tournament last year. They were a trendy pick. They're a good team. They're a good 13 seed. They can shoot the heck out of the ball, but it's just not going to be enough versus a very good Maryland team that's just consistent. Depth might get to them, but Maryland against Grand Canyon, I just don't think will be that close. So the early windows, I've got Baylor over Mississippi State, Alabama over Robert Morris, Iowa State over Lipscomb, Memphis over Colorado State, Duke over Mount St. Mary's, Vandy over St. Mary's, UNC over Ole Miss, and Maryland over Grand Canyon. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think of any of these games? We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention over to the late window, the final 8 games that take place tomorrow on Friday. We're going to break all of them down. Who's going to win those matchups? Why I think that's coming up next here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found. For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over the first 8 games in tomorrow's Friday slate of the round of 64. In this segment, we continue our predictions, going over the final 8 games in the late window, all the way from Florida Norfolk State to Liberty versus Oregon at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to talk about all of those games in a second, but before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Thursday, March 20th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into our next set of games, the Friday March Madness games, the back 8 of them, starting off with another 16 versus 1, this time Norfolk State taking on Florida. Florida is a near-perfect team. They've got the offense. They've got the defense. They've got everything you could possibly want out of a contender. They won the SEC tournament. They go out there. They get a number 1 seed. They are dangerous, very dangerous. They have the depth as well. Norfolk State, a 16 seed, has some tournament experience. They keep getting in after winning their conference, but they're just not going to stand much of a chance. The 29-point spread says it all. Florida going to absolutely dominate this one. Troy, the 14 seed out of the Sun Belt, taking on Kentucky, the 3 seed. This one I think is actually going to be really interesting. Kentucky is a great team this year, but they've had their struggles. I know that was with Coach Cal. He moves over to Arkansas, who is a 10 seed in our tournament playing today, but Kentucky still has a little bit of that stink on them. They have a new coach. Maybe that'll change. But I think Troy is a feisty team. The Sun Belt puts out some solid teams, not teams that are going to go out and win, but we saw James Madison last year take down Wisconsin in the first round as a 12 seed. We've seen the Sun Belt representative play teams tough the last couple of seasons, and I don't really think that's going to necessarily be any different this year. I think at the end of the day, Kentucky's still going to win this game, but it's not going to be as comfortable as people think. I don't think this Kentucky team is as dangerous as people think it is. I still think they win this game, though. Take down Troy, maybe not by 11.5 points, though. Then we have a 10-7 and a really interesting 10-7 as New Mexico takes on Marquette. Marquette ranked in the top near the top of college basketball for a very long time. They've got one of the best players in the tournament. They're favored by 3.5 in this one. New Mexico also very good. They have another one of those players that should be a guy to watch for the NBA draft. This game is going to be an absolute dogfight. It's going to be a tight game. I think at the end of the day, I'm going to cede more towards the team with tournament experience. I know New Mexico and Marquette both made it last year, but I think at the end of the day, the Golden Eagles are just a little bit more prepared for the tournament, prepared for the spotlight, and I really do like this Marquette team. They've shown up in March the last couple seasons. I don't know why that's going to change now. I'm going with Marquette to take down New Mexico in a really, really tight one. Then we have Akron, a 13 seed taking on the 4 seed Arizona. That's a 14.5 point spread. That is way, way too many points for an Arizona team that is just super inconsistent. This is an Arizona squad that, yes, while they are very good, while they do have any given stretch, they can shoot 400% from the field, 800% from 3, where they just simply don't miss. They also go in modes and stretches where they don't score, and that's a very dangerous team. It's a dangerous thing against an Akron Zips team that is equally as deadly from three. They can go on runs of their own. Arizona, I still think, is going to be able to pull this one out. They've been playing great basketball as of late, which is why they were able to go and secure a 4 seed. But it's just not consistent enough for me to truly believe in them deep into the tournament. I'm taking Arizona to take care of business against Akron, but it's going to be a lot tighter than people think, and this is a real upset potential of a game. Then we've got Oklahoma taking on UConn. Dan Hurley and his UConn Huskies have won 2 straight national titles. Doesn't feel like it's going to happen this year, but this is still a very talented UConn team. This is a UConn team that, like I said, has plenty of experience. 2 straight national championships for this team. They're favored by 5.5, and when it comes down to tournament experience, that is invaluable. I think Dan Hurley and his boys are going to do what they need to do, win this game, move on to take on Florida in the next round. That should be a great game as well. Should be a lot of fun. I think UConn moves on pretty easily in this one against a good Oklahoma team. Then we have another one of those teams advancing from the first 4. The Xavier takes on Illinois. 6 seed Illinois is a great team out of the Big Ten. They're favored by 3.5 in this one. Xavier showed up. They completed the comeback against a solid Texas team, but Xavier is a dangerous team in their own right. Illinois, dangerous, but they've just been a little bit too inconsistent. When you want to talk about a tournament team that wins the games, it's not ones that are going to be up and down. It's one that are consistently great, which is why we're talking about the UConn teams of last year, a team that just disposed of every single person, every single team that got in their way on their way to a second national title in a row. Illinois just doesn't quite match that consistency. Because of that, I think Xavier, who's coming off of playing a tightly contested game, is already ready and in that mindset, can jump on Illinois a little bit, get them out of their rhythm, and I think Xavier, with that first 4 experience, is going to be able to get this win, which is why I think the first 4 is so valuable. You get a little bit of game under your belt, you get ready under the bright lights, even though it's not as bright as the first round, but I still think Xavier's going to be able to do their job, win this one in an upset. Then we've got Michigan State. Michigan State and Tom Izzo have failed as to 2 seed before to get out of the first round. It's not happening this year against Bryant. Bryant is a solid team. I just think this Michigan State team, they know their strengths, they know their weaknesses. They know what they're good at, they know what they need work at. They're not going to beat you by shooting a barrage of 3-pointers. They're going to beat you with size, they're going to beat you with power, they're going to beat you with defense. That's why Michigan State, favored by 17.5 points in this one, should absolutely dominate the Bryant Bears. This is not going to be a very close game. Michigan not going to let Bryant get anything they want on the inside. And as long as they're efficient and they don't turn the ball over, they should be able to walk out of this pretty much scot-free. And the final game taking place on Friday is Liberty, the 12 seed, taking on Oregon. And this has been a semi-popular upset pick. You always want to pick a 12-5. Those tend to be matchups that win. But if we're talking about Oregon as the 5 seed that you're picking it over, they have never lost in the first round with their head coach, right? This is a team that consistently makes it to the Sweet 16. This is a team that consistently makes it further than you expect. And Oregon, once again, is going to be able to pull that up. They are favored by just 7 points in this one. Liberty's a good team. They're a good team. There's no doubt about that. And this is going to be a tight one. But I just don't see a way that Liberty is the one that ends that streak. Oregon has been incredibly consistent in March, and I don't see a way that that stops now. I love this Oregon Ducks team. They're a team that I think could make a run to the Final Four, a run to the Sweet 16, taking out presumably Arizona in the next round. It's going to be a very, very good game, but I think Oregon takes care of business against Liberty, continues their streak of not losing in the first round. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Again, the late Friday games, I got Florida over Norfolk State, Kentucky over Troy, Marquette over New Mexico, Arizona over Akron, UConn over Oklahoma, Xavier over Illinois, Michigan State over Bryant, and Oregon over Liberty. I know not too many upsets, but this year's bracket I feel like is going to be incredibly chalk. but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know what you think. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention over to baseball. Only 6 teams left to go over. Only 7 days left until baseball officially first pitch. We're going to talk about the Washington Nationals today, a very much improved team with a lot of young, burgeoning talent. Can they make a run to the playoffs in probably the toughest division in baseball? We'll be right back here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Thursday, March 20th. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over all of the games for Friday, all 16 games in the round of 64 taking place tomorrow. We went over every single game, predicted them, picked a couple upsets as well. Not as many as you might think, but this is pretty chalk bracket this year. Just 3 upsets I have tomorrow: Xavier, UNC, and Vanderbilt. In this segment, we turn our attention to baseball. We've been over almost every single team in the NL. Today, we finish it out, taking a look at the Washington Nationals. My favorite team. We're not going to be too biased here, but we're going to talk about what their season might look like with the additions and all the young talent officially being up on opening day. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those 2 things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Thursday, March 20th. But like I was saying, we're going to get a little bit into the Washington Nationals. We've been over every single NL team other than those Washington Nationals. Last year, they went 71-91, 4th in the NL East, missing the playoffs. This is a team that has gotten better and better every single year since they blew it up, moving off of their talent like Juan Soto, like Trey Turner, like Kyle Schwarber, like Max Scherzer, like all of the guys that helped them win a World Series back in 2019. This is a team that blew it all up and was starting fresh. They got a lot of great return on that. They've got a lot of players that are finally ready to come up, but it's not just that. Their offseason, while it wasn't the biggest as far as splash in the pan, which I know a lot of fans were hoping they would make at least one big move at like first baseman or potentially bringing Juan Soto back to DC. Instead, they made some just solid moves, low risk, high reward kind of guys, bringing back guys like Kyle Finnegan, who just had a career season as a closer. He's going to be back doing his thing again on a 1-year, $6 million deal. They brought in Paul DeJong on a 1-year, $1 million deal to play third base for them, a position that they really just don't have locked up at all in limited experience at third base. He looked like he could play solid defense over there, and he's been playing pretty good in the spring. They bring in Michael Soroka from the White Sox, the biggest contract they handed out on a per-year basis, 1 year, $9 million. They expect him to be a starter. He was really good in the bullpen last year for the White Sox. As a starter, he was just okay. It's tough to judge when he's on a White Sox team, but Soroka as a back-end starter, I don't really mind. Josh Bell returns to DC on a 1-year, $6 million deal after lighting it up after being traded to the Diamondbacks at the end of last year. They bring back starting pitcher Trevor Williams on a 2-year, $14 million deal. He had a good season. He had his best season in a long time early on before getting hurt and basically being shut down for the rest of the year. He's back on a 2-year deal, some veteran presence in that room with a lot of young guys. Shinosuke Ogasawara from Japan in the bullpen as a long reliever, 2 years, $3.5 million. Jorge Lopez and Lucas Sims for more bullpen help as well, both on 1-year, $3 million deals. And some backup bats. Ahmed Rosario, 1 year, $2 million. Not the most exciting offseason by any stretch of the imagination, but they got a couple pieces that I think could be pretty helpful for a team that's still not quite at their potential yet. The biggest move they made, though, was a trade. They made a trade with the Texas Rangers acquiring first baseman Nathaniel Lowe for relief pitcher Robert Garcia. Garcia is going to slot in as a back-end bullpen guy for the Rangers, but Lowe is going to step up as the starting first baseman for the Washington Nationals. Going to be in the lineup basically every single day. I love this move for the Nats. They needed a first baseman bad. They missed out on the top guys. Pete Alonso stayed with the Mets. They missed out on a couple of other guys that they probably could have traded for, like Christian Walker. Instead, they go and get Nathaniel Lowe, who's not a bad option at all. Not the number one, but not bad. And it's not the worst thing in the world for them to bring in a solid, proven first baseman like that. It wasn't all good, though. They lost a couple of guys, right? They lose relief pitchers, some guys that have been on the World Series team. In fact, now there is nobody left from the World Series winning team as Tanner Rainey and Patrick Corbin now gone. They leave in free agency. Joe La Sorsa also gone. Ildemaro Vargas, who's been a staple in the locker room, is gone as a utility guy. Joey Meneses has been up and down from the major leagues, but provided a spark every once in a while. And Joey Gallo is gone as well, just a true 3-outcome kind of guy. They didn't lose anybody too important this year. The important part is their young talent that they have. This is a team flush with young stars in the pitching staff and in the order. We're going to start off with the bats. You've got C.J. Abrams, star shortstop, made an all-star game last year. He is amazing. Shortstop there. Right field, Dylan Cruz, a top 2 pick in the draft a couple years ago, came out of LSU with Paul Skeens. He's going to be in right field. Amazing defender. He came up at the end of last year, provided a little bit of pop with his bat. The big name, James Wood, they got in the trade for Juan Soto from the Padres. He's going to be in left field. His defense could use a little bit of work, but his ability with the bat is going to put him in near the top of the league, especially when it comes to just pure power numbers. They bring back Josh Bell to be a DH, hit fourth. He can play a little first base too if you need to give Nathaniel Lowe a day off. They have Lowe at first base behind him hitting fifth. Then they have Luis Garcia, who I think is prone for a breakout. I love Luis Garcia. He's one of the best second basemen in baseball. Third baseman Paul DeJong, we talked about him a little bit already. Keibert Ruiz playing catcher. He's the best catcher on the roster, but he needs to really step it up defensively if he wants to stay in Washington for the long term. And center fielder Jacob Young, a guy who was robbed of a Gold Glove last season, one of the best pure defensive guys in baseball. He bulked up, had a little bit of pop to him in the spring. He's still fast. He's still explosive. This is going to be a really good lineup. It's nothing that's going to blow your socks off, right? It's nothing that you're going to be like, I don't want to face this lineup. It's scary. But up and down, all the way 1 to 9, there's not a spot that I'm like, oh, thank God. There's nobody that I'm scared of here. This is a team that I think is just going to be solid this year. They do have a couple injuries. Andres Chaparro, who stepped up big time near the end of last season after the trade deadline, is hurt. He should be back soon. But the rotation is really where I get excited. They have Mackenzie Gore, who has ace-level stuff. He just needs to put it all together. Trevor Williams, a little bit of a veteran. Jake Irvin, who pitched at an all-star level last year. Mitchell Parker also pitched at an all-star level last year. Some of the best first couple starts in anybody's in the league history. Michael Soroka, we talked about at 5. They've also got Josiah Gray, who had Tommy John last season. He should be back soon, should slot in probably to where the Trevor Williams spot is. Maybe they just run a 6-man rotation, but this is a really good spot. Lots of young talent, lots of guys that can be here for the long term. The big thing for the Nationals is they've got to start to pay people soon, and that's when the money's going to get tight. The bullpen is weak. I'll just be honest here. It's not a great bullpen. Kyle Finnegan is an okay closer. He's not the number one closer in baseball, but he'll get his job done. Jorge Lopez they bring in, and Derek Law was there last year. Jose A. Ferrer is a name you should be paying attention to. He's a lefty. He's probably a future closer for the Washington Nationals. He's gonna be really good. Lucas Sims, Eduardo Salazar, Colin Poche, and Shinosuke Ogasawara round out the rest of that bullpen. But it's just an okay bullpen. It's not the worst in the league. It's not the best in the league, but it's not the worst the Nationals have fielded. I would actually go as far as to say that the one that they won the 2019 World Series with might even be worse, at least on the same level as this bullpen, which is not where you want to be. Mason Thompson, solid lefty, and Zach Brixey, who is going to stay in the minor leagues, both injured right now in the 40-man. But the over-under for this team is set at 71.5 wins. Last year, they won 71 games. This is a team that I think undoubtedly got better. I don't think they're good enough to make the playoffs this year, especially in a division as stacked as the NL East with the Mets, the Braves, and the Phillies in it. I still think they'll finish 4th in that division, but I think they're going to get better. I think they'll flirt with 80 wins. I've got them sitting at 78 wins this year, 78 and 84. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think the Washington Nationals will be able to get done this season? And thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We'll be back tomorrow talking everything March Madness. We'll preview the round of 32. We'll turn on over to the AL East as we get to our final division in baseball, as the baseball season is right around the corner, and anything else that might happen around the world of sports today. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to